He didn't even look me in the eye when he announced it. Just sent the email. Subject line, "Congratulations to our new assistant director." And there it was, her name. The manager's niece. No qualifications. No experience. Meanwhile, I'd given them 10 years of flawless work, 10 years of staying late, cleaning up messes, and never asking for credit. And they handed her the future I built with my bare hands. Welcome back to Revenge with James, where silence isn't weakness, and betrayal never goes unanswered. If you've ever been passed over, overlooked, or underestimated, you're in the right place. Let me tell you what happened after that email, and why I didn't need to raise my voice to bury their lies. Before the betrayal, my life was quiet, steady. Every morning, I left the house before the sun rose. Same black thermos, same brown leather shoes. My wife would still be asleep, curled on her side of the bed. Sometimes I'd brush her hair off her cheek before leaving, just enough to feel like I still mattered somewhere before entering the place that made me feel invisible. The streets were calm that early, dew on the windshield, the low hum of streetlights still buzzing. I liked those few minutes in the car, no calls, no meetings, just me and a dashboard clock I never let run behind. I took pride in being first to the office, coffee machine humming, floors still clean, inbox untouched. I liked starting the day before the world woke up. It gave me a sense of control, a rhythm I could count on, even when everything else felt unpredictable. At work I wasn't flashy. I didn't gossip. I didn't cut corners. I just did the job, every detail, every time. People brought me their problems because I never passed blame. If something needed fixing, I fixed it. If a client was furious, I handled it. I made other people's fires my responsibility, even when no one said thank you. At home I wasn't much different. Dinner was quiet most nights. My son would tell me about school while I washed up. My wife would place a hand on my back when I sighed too loudly. She believed I was being groomed for promotion. We both did. We weren't rich, but we were proud. We had one car, a mortgage we were finally ahead on, and a small patch of grass I mowed myself every Sunday. There was love in our house, the kind that doesn't shout but shows up. The kind that assumes loyalty means something in the world. And for the man I was trying to prove I already was. Some people you work beside for years and never really know. Others, you know too well even when they're smiling. My manager, Craig, had the kind of grin that made you feel like you were in on something, until you realized you were the only one not laughing. He'd pat me on the shoulder in the break room, and say things like, "I don't know how we'd survive without you." But he never said it in front of anyone else. Never in writing. Just over coffee, with a wink like a man leaving no evidence. Then there was Jordan, the kind of coworker who liked to start fires and then ask you to put them out. He once told me, "You're the guy who always has his hands full, huh?" It was meant to sound like praise, but it felt like a reminder. You carry it because no one else will. Still, there were people who made it bearable, like Lily in HR, who always remembered how I took my tea, 2 sugars, no milk. She once said quietly, "You deserve more." That was a year before the promotion. Even then, I think she saw the writing on the wall before I did. And at home, my wife Dana, she's not loud but she's present. The kind of woman who remembers what shoes hurt your feet and tells you before you leave the house. She believed in me. She believed in what I was building, even when the results weren't visible. She once framed one of my Employee of the Month certificates like it was a diploma. I laughed, but she looked serious and said, "One day they'll see what I already do." She never talked about promotions or pay bumps, she just talked about peace. And she thought mine was coming. Our son Caleb was 10 at the time. Smart kid, too observant. One night, he saw me come home quieter than usual. Didn't ask what was wrong, just said, "Want me to microwave your dinner?" Like a man would. That one sentence hit harder than most conversations I had all week. And then there was her, Mia. Didn't know what a pivot table was. Asked me to do one for her and said, "You're good with boring stuff, right?" I smiled. Didn't answer, but I remembered every conversation, every shrug. Every time someone said, "Well, what can we do?" It wasn't about the title. Not really. It wasn't about corner offices or plaques on the wall. What I wanted was to matter. To the people I loved, to the ones who looked up to me. To walk through the door at night and feel like all those hours away meant something. But what mattered most to me was Dana. Not just because she was my wife, but because she knew the man I tried to be when the world wasn't watching. She never asked for more than honesty, peace, and effort. But I still wanted to give her more. I wanted her to wake up one day and know she'd married not just a good man, but one who was finally seen. And Caleb, every time he told someone my dad works at an office, I wanted him to feel proud, not just polite. He once drew a picture of me in a tie, standing next to a huge building, with a gold star on my chest. When I asked what the star was, he said, "That means you're the boss." I just smiled. But that stayed with me, Because I didn't want to be the kind of father who disappears into work and still gets treated like he's replaceable. I grew up watching my own father come home exhausted, fingernails stained, knees shot from years of factory floors. He never complained, but I knew he wanted me to have something different, to earn through brains, not just backaches, and I promised I would. I promised I'd build something steady, respectable, something I could hand down, not as money but as proof that you can do things the right way and still win. So every late night I stayed behind, every vacation day I rolled over, every meeting I fixed without credit. It wasn't for applause, it was for the moment I could walk in the door, put my bag down and tell my wife and son, it happened, they saw me, I got it. That was supposed to be the payoff. That was what I worked for. And that's what they took. It didn't happen all at once. At first it was just little things. The kind you ignore because you're tired, or busy, or trying not to seem paranoid. Like how Craig the manager stopped asking for my input during meetings. Before he'd always make eye contact when a client brought up a problem. Now he'd glance over me like I was part of the wallpaper. Didn't even frown, just moved on. And then there were meetings I was accidentally left off of. I'd walk into the boardroom only to see them already seated. Halfway through a presentation, Craig would say, "Oh, didn't think you needed to be in this one," with that same easy smile. I'd get copied on fewer emails, hear about things secondhand, like I was slipping down a ladder I'd spent years climbing, and no one bothered to tell me I'd already hit the bottom. Even the energy in the office felt different. The receptionist used to greet me like I mattered. Now she barely looked up. People who used to linger at my desk for advice were suddenly tiptoeing around me. Quiet conversations would end when I entered a room. And Mia, she started walking with this strange confidence. Not learning, not observing, owning. As if she already knew something the rest of us didn't. She asked fewer questions, took credit for small wins I handed her. Once she presented one of my project updates to the team. I hadn't been invited to the meeting, but someone sent me the deck afterward. My formatting, my language, but her initials on the file. And when I asked her gently why my name wasn't included, she just smiled and said, "Oh, I figured you wouldn't mind. You're more behind the scenes, right?" I didn't argue. I told myself, it's fine. She's young, she's new, you're still the steady hand. But something in my chest tightened that day, not from anger, from recognition. I remember one winter, 2 days before Christmas, a server crashed at 6:30 p.m. Everyone was gone, phones off. I was halfway out the door, holding a gift bag for my wife. But when Craig called me panicked, I turned around, spent the next 5 hours in that cold office. Jacket on my chair, fingers numb, rewriting code from scratch. He didn't thank me publicly, but the next morning, there was a bottle of bourbon on my desk. No note, just a gesture. And at the time, that was enough. Then there was the night my son had a fever, 103 burning up. Dana called while I was in the middle of prepping for a client pitch. I remember standing in the hallway, torn between PowerPoint slides and parenting. She said, "If you stay, I'll understand. Just know he asked for you." So I left, held Caleb's hand through the night, still got up early, still showed up, still delivered that pitch like nothing ever happened. And that's how it was for years. And I didn't keep score. I told myself, this is how you earn trust. You say yes when no one else will. You step up when it's not your turn. You carry what others drop. Even when my father died, I went back to work 3 days later. Didn't want the sympathy. Didn't want the attention. I just wanted to keep my head down and prove I was still dependable. Still solid. Because that's who I thought I was to them, the anchor. The one they could count on when everything else shook loose. But lately, it felt like none of it mattered. Like every sacrifice had been swallowed whole and forgotten. It was a Tuesday. I remember because the sky was gray, the kind that makes the office lights feel harsher. I was early, as usual, desk already cleared, notes prepared. There was a big leadership meeting that day, and I'd been up late reviewing 3 project proposals. I wasn't told I'd be presenting, but I came ready, just in case. 9:02 a.m. An internal memo came through, subject line announcing our new assistant director of strategy. I opened it without thinking. The kind of announcement you expect to read with a half smile, waiting to see if it's someone you respect. And then I saw the name, Mia Carlisle. No last-minute meetings, no interviews, no shortlist, no congratulations in advance. Just her, standing beside Craig, beaming, holding a plaque like she'd earned it. In the photo she was holding my future, smiling in the same room I built with my own 2 hands. Standing where I should have been. The email went out to the whole department. Within seconds the office started buzzing. Quiet, coded reactions. Someone near me said under their breath, "That was fast." Another coughed and tapped their keyboard louder than usual. But no one said anything to me directly. No one looked at me. I sat there, frozen, staring at that email, like it was a mirror, showing me the truth I had refused to see for months. And then Craig walked by. Not a glance, not a nod, just a soft clap on Mia's shoulder, as he passed her desk and said, "Told you we'd make this happen." That was it. No announcement to the team. No meeting to explain the decision. No thank you for my decade of service. Nothing. And the worst part? She turned and looked at me like she expected me to clap too. Like I was supposed to smile and fade into the background. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't cruel on the surface. But that betrayal, it was delivered in plain font, CE'd to 47 people, and sealed with a smile. I didn't go straight home that day. I walked out of that building, like I'd done 1,000 times before. Same steps, same badge, same heavy door. But everything felt different. Like I was walking away from a place that never actually saw me. Just sat there, hands on the wheel, key in the ignition, staring straight ahead, like the road would eventually explain something to me. The parking lot slowly emptied around me. Laughter in the distance. Someone slammed a car door, and I sat still, breathing through the tightness in my chest that I couldn't name yet. I wasn't angry, not the kind you yell about. I wasn't even shocked. What I felt was hollow, like someone had slowly scooped out all the belief I'd built over 10 years, and left the shell intact. I thought about Dana, about what I'd tell her that night when she asked how the meeting went. I thought about Caleb, if he'd ever understand why his dad came home quieter than usual. And then I thought about that picture in the email, Craig with his hand on her shoulder, her holding that plaque like it meant something. I had no proof. But deep down, I knew that moment hadn't just happened. It had been planned, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel tired. I felt clear. A few years back, Craig's numbers weren't adding up and the department was bleeding a client because someone forgot to file a compliance update. Someone with his last name. I caught the error just in time, worked through a weekend to fix it, rebuilt the report line by line, and presented it Monday morning like it was a team effort. I didn't take credit, didn't throw anyone under the bus. And when the board approved the budget, Craig shook my hand in private and said, "I owe you one." That was the debt. But I never asked for it back. Then there was me. 6 months after she joined, she botched a vendor contract so badly it almost cost the company 30. Instead of letting her sink, I rewrote the contract, renegotiated the deal, and convinced the vendor to stay. She called it a close call. I called it saving your job without saying it out loud. I trained her, coached her, covered for her when she overslept for a Monday morning meeting. And Craig asked where she was. I said she's under the weather. I've got her notes. And I did. Because I believed that loyalty meant something. I believed that building others up didn't mean you had to tear yourself down. But the truth? They weren't looking for someone dependable. They were looking for someone they could decorate. And I was never meant to be seen, just used. Quarterly review day. One of the biggest meetings of the year. I'd been preparing the department analysis for weeks. Data, charts, notes. All mine. I walked into the boardroom, with my binder in hand, just like every year. Craig was already there. Mia sat at the table with a stack of printed reports in front of her. I smiled politely and took my usual seat. That's when Craig cleared his throat. "Mia will be leading today's presentation," he said. "She's taken initiative on the quarterly numbers, and has some new projections to walk us through." I just sat there, watching her present 10 years of my systems, as if they were her fresh ideas. Watched Craig nod along, arms crossed, pride in his eyes. And the moment that did it, halfway through, she stumbled over a number, panicked, looked at me, and I, like an idiot, mouthed the correction. She smiled, and kept going. Craig turned to me afterward and said, "Thanks for backing her up. You're a real team player." That was it. That was it. That was the moment I knew. They were never going to promote me, never going to respect me, never going to see me. I wasn't a mentor. I was a shadow, a safety net they pretended not to notice, until they needed to land on me. And from that moment on, I stopped catching them. I didn't raise my voice, didn't call anyone out, didn't storm into Craig's office, demanding answers or dignity. No. I walked out of that boardroom, with the same quiet I'd carried in, but something in me had changed. That night, after dinner, I put Caleb to bed like always, tucked him in, turned off the light. Dana asked if everything was okay. I kissed her on the forehead and said, "Yeah, just thinking about work." She didn't press. She knows when I need space. I stayed up until 2 a.m. that night, not to sulk, but to remember every detail, every correction I made on her behalf, every document, every missed email, every client interaction I'd handled in silence, while someone else smiled for the credit. I opened folders I hadn't touched in years, backed up emails, downloaded files, saved voice memos, screenshots, timestamp. Then I made a list, not of what they took, but of what I had left.
Proof. I didn't share it. Didn't vent. Didn't post a thing. I just started building something I'd never been allowed to my exit. A clean one. One no one would see coming. There were no confrontation. No threats. Just quiet steps. A meeting with someone I trusted in legal. A quiet phone call with HR. A folder labeled for review only. I even smiled more at work.
Because now, I wasn't chasing a seat at their table. I was building my own. They didn't notice a thing. Not when I started copying my files to an external drive. Not when I began forwarding key emails to a private account. Not when I sat in meetings and took notes. Not for the agenda, but for the audit I knew was coming. I smiled more, nodded along, said things like, "That's a great idea, Mia," even when I knew it would collapse in 2 weeks. Because now, I wasn't cleaning up after them. I was documenting them. I stopped advising, stopped suggesting. When Mia emailed a client with the wrong specs, I didn't intercept it. When Craig approved a budget that didn't match the numbers, I didn't correct him. I just watched and saved. HR got a quiet packet, no cover letter. Just dates, signatures, and contradictions. Legal got another, a timeline of discrepancies, with references to internal policy and client contract clauses. And while they were busy organizing a team-building retreat, I was sitting in a quiet cafe across town, signing a contract with their biggest competitor. Same salary doubled. Title? Director. The best part? The vendor Mia lost 6 months ago. He called me after hearing I'd left. Said, "I always knew you were the one actually running that department." Craig canceled 2 lunch meetings in 1 week. And I stayed silent. Because real revenge doesn't need applause. It just needs accuracy. There were nights I couldn't sleep, not because I regretted the steps I took, but because I started asking myself the kind of questions that don't have clean answers. Maybe I should have let them have the promotion, the title, the lies. Let them choke on their own mess without lifting a finger. There were moments I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. He wasn't angry. He wasn't broke, but he wasn't the same man who believed loyalty was a virtue. He was sharper, colder, a little more careful with where he put his trust. And I wonder, is that the cost of survival? Is that what it means to finally learn the game? Because I didn't just lose a job. I lost the version of myself who believed that if you just kept showing up, people would eventually do right by you. That man's gone now. And what's left behind isn't bitter, just awake. I still think about Craig sometimes, about me, about the people who watched me burn while they warmed their hands by the fire. And I wonder if they ever realized what they really lost. But me? I'm not chasing closure. I'm not chasing titles. I'm chasing peace. And this was the cost. They always overplay their hand. It's not enough to take what isn't theirs. They have to flaunt it, to wave it like a flag, forgetting the wind always changes. Craig made the mistake first. After Mia's promotion, he started bringing her into higher-level meetings, bragged about her fresh leadership style to the board, even pushed for her to be the face of a major client presentation, one I had built from the ground up. And then in the middle of that call, with executives on both ends, she slipped. She claimed credit for a strategy I'd implemented a year prior, used language directly lifted from a document I had written, word for word. He leaned in during that call and asked her, "Where did you say you learned that again?" She froze, stumbled, and Craig tried to step in, smooth it over, pivot the meeting, but it was too late. The next morning, HR reached out. A quiet internal audit started rolling. I didn't have to push. I just watched. 2 weeks later, Mia's name was gone from the company directory. Her desk cleared out. Craig sent an email citing personal health matters and announced his resignation. No fanfare, no farewell cake, just 2 empty chairs, and the sound of their empire quietly caving in. I didn't need a speech. No warning, no dramatic entrance, just a manila folder, placed on the boardroom table, labeled compliance irregularities, internal review, emails Mia had signed, ones she wasn't authorized to, budget approvals. Craig pushed through without secondary signatures. Client complaints. They buried. It didn't scream. It didn't beg. It simply spoke for itself. HR read it. Legal followed up quietly. The board requested a closed-door meeting. 3 days later, an envelope was slid under Craig's door. He walked out with his coat draped over his arm, didn't pack a box, didn't say goodbye. Mia never returned after that. And me? I left my key card on my desk, shook hands with Lily from HR, and walked down those fluorescent-lit halls for the last time. Not as someone defeated, but as someone who finally stopped waiting to be chosen. 2 weeks later, I started at the competitor, titled Director of Operations. Same city, same industry, different rules, and when I walked into that office on my first day, the receptionist greeted me with a smile and said, "Welcome, Mr. Daniels. We've been expecting you." They didn't see it coming, not because I was sneaky, but because they were arrogant enough to believe I wouldn't dare. After the audit, the office changed. People got quiet. Whispers in the hallway replaced laughter. Memos started getting double-checked. Some folks wouldn't even meet my eyes, like they were afraid guilt might rub off just by looking at me. Jordan, the guy who used to shrug every time Mia messed up, stopped me in the stairwell one morning. He didn't say much, just nodded and said, "We all knew, just didn't think you'd be the one to do it." And Craig, cut Craig. I saw him one last time, 2 days after he cleared his office. We crossed paths at a local cafe. He looked thinner, tired, still wearing the same coat, but it hung off him like it didn't fit anymore. He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought he might say something, might explain, might apologize, but he didn't. And in that silence, with all his power gone, all his schemes exposed, his eyes screamed the thing his mouth never did. Not one person asked where I went. No farewell card. No "we'll miss you." Not because I'm bitter, but because I finally understand what it costs to pretend everything's fine, while people walk all over you. That man, the one who waited 10 years for recognition, the one who carried teams, cleaned up messes, and kept believing that loyalty would speak louder than politics. He's gone. But he was waiting for people to reward what they never valued in the first place. I've changed. I move differently now. I ask questions. I document everything. And I don't stay in rooms where I'm only tolerated. I'm not colder, just clearer, not harder, just done carrying weight that doesn't belong to me. And it's not about revenge anymore. For 10 years I carried the same brown leather work bag, scuffed at the corners, handles slightly worn, a gift from Dana after my first full year on the job. She'd saved for it, said, "If you're going to carry everyone's work, at least carry it with style." That bag saw everything. Late nights, early mornings, coffee stains, crumpled feedback forms, performance reviews that never said enough, and emails that said too much. It sat beside me during meetings where I was promised more, tucked under chairs when I waited to be called on, but never held my notes the day Mia gave my presentation in my words. When I left that place, I didn't leave with much, just that bag. But when I walked into my new office, a clean desk, sunlight through real windows, a nameplate that spelled my name right, I set that bag down on the floor and never picked it up again. It still sits in the corner of my home office now, unzipped, empty, not because I forgot it, but because it's done what it needed to do. It carried a version of me that believed being useful was enough, that carrying the weight meant being valued. And now, I walk lighter, because I've learned, some things you carry until they shape you. Others, you carry until you finally realize you're allowed to put them down. There was no headline, no press release, no scandal that made the news, but quietly, the contracts dried up, the board meetings got shorter, their office lease didn't renew. I kept showing up, but now, I show up for me. There's something powerful about winning without noise, about watching people fold under the weight of the truth they built themselves. I didn't destroy them, I just let them tell the story they thought no one was watching. And now, I sleep better. Because justice doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes, it walks out the door in silence, holding nothing but a thin folder and a full name. Was I wrong to gather the proof, to hand them their own decisions, wrapped in silence and dates, to protect what I built, not with noise, but with truth? I didn't burn the place down. I didn't scream. I didn't humiliate them in public. I just stopped catching their fall. And still, some part of me asks, was it petty? Was it revenge? Or was it survival? I used to think being a good man meant swallowing your pride and taking the hit again and again, because it kept the peace. But what happens when the peace only exists to keep you small? So I ask you, if someone handed your life to a stranger, would you stand there and smile? Or would you quietly walk away and build something they can never take from you again? Because sometimes that's the most honest thing you can do. They thought I'd do nothing. They thought I'd keep showing up, keep nodding, keep carrying the weight while they passed out rewards like favors at a family cookout. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flip the table. I didn't fight for a seat they never intended to give me. I waited. I waited while they built their little tower out of shortcuts and stolen credit. I waited while they smirked and clapped each other on the back. I waited until they handed me the rope, and all I did was let them pull. If you've ever sat in a room you built and felt invisible inside it, if you've ever watched someone take your work, your place, your voice and smile like they earned it, you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to fight to be seen by people who already decided you don't exist.
You need to protect what's yours, even if that means walking away with nothing but your name and your proof. If this story hits somewhere you've never said out loud, tell me below, or just write, "They thought I'd do nothing." That's enough. And if you've ever had to choose dignity over noise, subscribe. This isn't just a channel, it's a space for people who waited and then acted quietly. 5 months later, my phone rang. It was a number I hadn't saved, but I knew who it was before I even answered. There's a kind of silence on the other end of the line that only shows up when someone's lost something they thought they'd never lose. He didn't say his name, didn't have to. I recognized the weight in his pause. I listened. He talked about unfortunate transitions, about confusion in leadership. He asked if I'd be open to coming back in some kind of senior advisory role. Said there were still people who respected my experience. I let him finish. Then I said, "I already advised you. You just didn't listen." And I hung up. Because the thing about time, it reveals what ego tries to bury. And 5 months is more than enough time for the silence to start talking. What would you have done? Would you have fought back, kicked down the door and demanded your name be on that plaque? Or would you have walked away quietly, like I did, with the proof, the silence, and the truth in your hands? Would you have kept fixing their mistakes, hoping they'd finally see? Or would you have let them fall? What do you do when the very people you built a future for turn around and hand it to someone who didn't earn it? Tell me below. Tell me if you've ever given your best and watched someone else smile with the reward. Or just write, "I gave more than they saw." That's enough. Because this channel, this space is for the ones who stayed quiet until it was time not